Hey guys, welcome to the shop. Today's video we're looking at really a couple of bluing projects that have come in, and we're going to talk about what we have to do to make the customers happy on these guns. Now these customers have two slightly different standards. This guy was really comfortable with me just doing a strip and dip because his gun is overall in good shape. It really should get some polishing here and here, and a little bit around this marking here, but it's overall not bad. I understand not every customer has the budget to pay me for however many hours it takes to do a good polishing job. And that's one of the things we do have to do in business is at some level you need to work to a price point. This is going to be a little bit more involved of a job because this is a post 64 Winchester 94. For those of you who are kind of in the know or aren't in the know, these guns are relatively hard to blue. The receivers on them, it's pretty high in chromium and nickel. And I understand it is also exceptionally high carbon for an alloy steel. These are closer to cast iron than they are most gun alloys. From what I've been reading, they're like 1.5% carbon or so. I think it's mostly the matrix and the way the alloying elements are dissolved in these that you get iffy and weird bluing. I have a way to do good bluing on them, so that's what I do. It's not going to look as good as the barrel bands or the lever or the I can never remember what this is called. This is the finger lever. It's like the finger lever assembly. It's not going to look brand new. Because I'm not going to replate this, but I am going to polish it, and I don't know if I'll show you guys polishing or not. I have a huge soft spot actually for the post 64 Winchester 94s. This kind of like late 70s, early 80s era before they went to angle eject is my personal favorite generation. I don't like the look of the angle eject receivers. I think these just look too good. They look too classic. Now, I understand why other people have a preference for the angle ejects, but that's just not me. And part of the reason these post 64 guns always look like crap is just because of the plating process. It's very, very delicate. This one's in rough shape, but it's not horrible. I would be a little bit upset if this were my personal gun and it got this far, but it's definitely salvageable without a lot of trouble. I budgeted with this customer, we're going to put like an hour or two of polishing into it. This is, I think, going to end up with a positive result that he will be satisfied with. But again, you never really know if the customer is going to be happy until the end. But I wanted to show you kind of two starting points for a later video. We'll look at an intermediary point where we're polishing this, and I'll talk to you guys about how I polish and why. Generally speaking, I will reinstall screws. And there's a good reason for that, and we can talk about it because this customer is not willing to pay for hand polishing, so we're going to machine polish. And because we're machine polishing, we really want those screws in there so we don't wash out the holes nearly as bad. I think a smeared polishing job like that is just a sign of an amateur. And I do not consider myself an amateur, so I like to have the details set on that. I'm not actually sure I'll really even need to do much on the barrel. I'll see once I strip it, but I'm probably going to tear this guy down and clean the bore just to make sure the bore is in good shape. I mean, they almost universally are on these 3030s. Now, I just use foaming bore cleaner as a start. We're going to just spray some in here so it starts working while I'm filming. I really love foaming bore cleaner. I think it is really a tremendous help in the elbow grease area, but some types of fouling it just won't touch, unfortunately. I'm hoping it's not this stuff because this mostly looks like powder and carbon fouling. I really think they're all interchangeable. I don't have a strong preference on brand. But I do really love these Winchester 94s. They're one of my favorite rifles, and they're my favorite lever action rifles. I mean, this one here is in pretty mechanically good shape. Nothing's screaming at me. It does have a weak carrier lifter spring, but I'm going to take it apart. It could actually just be rusty and a lack of lubrication is really my first thought, because all indications show me that this really hasn't been shot a tremendous amount. And if it hasn't been shot a tremendous amount, I can't justify throwing parts at it, because unfortunately the price I quoted to the customer is half of what a carrier lifter spring is now, because parts have gone up a lot. And that's going to be happening a lot. I've got to be really careful about not giving people parts quotes right now. With everything going on internationally, it's just, I'm starting to see gun prices creep up in some areas, but I think retail prices are going to go down because sales are down so much. So we're kind of in a weird area here. I don't really know what's going on. And there are a million videos on how to take these guys apart and reassemble them that are filmed better than I can do. I tend to swear while I work, so I don't want to put that on YouTube and get demonetized, because we're actually starting to throw some cash off on this channel now. But overall, this is really exciting. I'll probably, when it's apart and before it's polished, we'll do an intermediate video and I'll talk about some of the things you need to look for on these guns. I like to check for them even before I've finally accepted the gun. You know, like loose screws here are a big common issue. I didn't see any cracks forming on this, so I'm not too worried there. Cracked fore ends are a really common issue. Wear on the carrier latch, or the shell stop, I should say, is common, but it's not that common because these guns generally don't get shot that much. So we'll see. Once this is a pile of parts, we can show you what to inspect for wear. Maybe I won't. I don't know. But we may actually find something really interesting in this that's worth looking at. And I mean, this old Smith & Wesson is like, I did a mechanical function test on this guy. She's perfectly in time. Thankfully, because I really don't like retiming revolvers. I don't do a lot of revolver work, in case you haven't noticed. So it's something that always stresses me out while I'm working. I can do it well, but it is not an enjoyable process. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little brief video on the introduction to a couple of our bluing projects. I'm debating, honestly, pulling the barrel on this and just rust bluing the receiver, which is what I might do, because it can be less stress than dealing with the 5 or 6 step bluing process otherwise for these, and I don't really want to deal with muriatic acid. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm hoping you really enjoy the final project on these. I think it's going to look pretty good and definitely be a nice little feather in my cap for the year.